welcome back to the review you've been looking for. My name is Kyle, your host, as always. Thank you for joining me for episode 4, where we are going to kick off the prequel trilogy today with episode 4 of this show, the review you've been looking for, but episode 1 in the trilogy, the fourth Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace. So if you haven't seen the show before, most of the episode is going to be me recapping the movie, kind of going through it here. I'm going to try to make it maybe a shorter product without skipping over too many big details, but that's going to be May the Plot Be With You, and then we're going to have an award for The Force is Strong with this one, which will be the actor-actress that stood out the most for me in this movie, and then we are going to have an overall score and then just the rankings for the Star Wars universe. We are doing every Star Wars movie reviewed, so the original trilogy is up there with New Hope, Empire, and Jedi, so please go check those out. And please, if this is your first time, hope you like the content, and please subscribe if you can to that channel, so eventually I can change my YouTube name to Project Potter for the URL and not just a series of letters and numbers. Yeah, here we go. Alright, so episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So we get the opening crawl, as we do for all the Star Wars movies, or the first 3 and then this one as well. The opening crawl says, turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, the Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict. Just reading this, I was kind of bored just reading the opening crawl here, but I think this movie actually holds up a lot better than I thought it was going to, and I did enjoy more of my time than I originally thought I would. So, the opening scene here after the crawl, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is played by Ewan McGregor in the prequel series, and then Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson. They both show up. They're the 2 Jedi Knights that were dispatched for this trade dispute. Obi says, "I've got a bad feeling about this." It's the first line of the movie, or first real line of any consequence, really. And then Qui-Gon says, "That's strange, I don't sense anything." Kind of reminded me of a little bit of the Emperor Palpatine from Return of the Jedi, where Vader is like, "My son is on that ship," and he's like, "That's strange, I don't sense anything." So I kind of had a weird flashback at the opening scene here. But Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they go wait in like the boardroom, or looks like a meeting room, and Obi-Wan says, "Does it usually like take this long to meet?" And they're like, "No, something's up." They send a droid in. The Federation sends a droid in to like give them like tea or water or something. But Qui-Gon says he senses an unusual amount of fear for a simple trade dispute. And this is when the traders or the Federation contacts Lord Sidious, and he says, kill the Jedi immediately. So the front of the ship that they arrived on is actually blowing up. They start filling the room with poisonous gas. Somehow Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are like not affected by this gas, because there's kind of a cool sequence, but it seems kind of rushed, where the battle droids are like ready to open the door. The droid comes out, and then the room is filled with green gas, and then you just see the lightsabers, the blue and green lightsabers of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon light up there. But they just step out of the room full of poisonous gas like it's no big deal. Like they just brush it off. So that was a little bit weird. You think they'd be like covering their mouths or something, but I don't know. Maybe it's a Jedi thing. They're immune to poison. Who knows? But this is cool because Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just start wrecking these droids. These are like the Roger droids. This is kind of more of like a childish take on the droids, because they're really kid-friendly, and a lot of this movie is kid-friendly. So it loses kind of the serious tone of the original trilogy, I think, pretty quickly, but there's still enough good things here. And I gotta say, this is the part where this is the first big visual upgrade I've noticed in 4K. I bought the whole 4K set not too long ago, and the original trilogy looks great. Everything looks better in 4K. I like knowing it's the highest possible quality. But this was the first time where I really, I've seen these movies on Blu-ray before, and I popped into 4K, and I was like, this movie looks really good, like in 4K. So that popped, and like the lightsaber colors, and just like everything is just jumping off the screen. It looks really clean, and I almost forgot that it was an old movie. I think 2001. I think it's a 19-year-old movie now, so that was cool. I liked kind of the upgrade there in visuals there for sure. So we get Queen Amidala. She Skypes in there. Everyone's using like some sort of hologram, as we know in Star Wars, the universe. She's using like some sort of TV or device to like chime in there. But we get Queen Amidala. She says, the Federation has gone too far this time. And then that's when the Federation is like, we would never do anything without the approval of the Senate. And it's like, it's the people who play the Federation, it's like really weird acting, and like the voicing is weird because it's like they took like very clearly like a non-American to like poorly read the dialogue lines, and I don't know if they were going for like a foreign voice there, but I don't know. It's strange. It's like the lines are not very well delivered at all for anyone in the Federation, but I digress. Basically, we get a shot of Senator Palpatine then, and he is trying to talk to Queen Amidala through a hologram, but it's like cut short, and they're like, oh, the only reason that he would be able to transmit his message is due to an invasion. So they know something is up already. Then we cut down to the Jedi who escaped, which they don't tell Lord Sidious about, but they actually stow away on like a trade ship, and they get down to Naboo, where we meet Jar Jar Binks. And Jar Jar Binks is the worst character in all of Star Wars, by far. I don't think I've ever met someone who likes Jar Jar Binks, like genuinely finds him appealing. I know some people like hate 3PO, and those people are crazy, because 3PO is great. But Jar Jar Binks, I think, universally just sucks. And I feel bad. And again, if you don't like the character on screen, don't be sending them death threats like Rose Leslie, not Rose Leslie. I forget the actress's name right now, but we'll see you later down the line in the sequel trilogy. Who plays Rose? She got a lot of hate, and then they pretty much scratched her from Rise of Skywalker at the end. But don't ever send someone like death threats. That's not cool. It's not the guy who played Jar Jar Binks' fault. I think he said he like almost committed suicide because he got so many like hate mail and death threats, and it's like this character is the worst. And like George Lucas screwed up this character real badly, and he was trying to go for like a funny, childish bit. It doesn't work at all for me personally. Like, and I don't think anyone likes Jar Jar. He's just really annoying, and his voice sucks. But that's not the actor's fault. He was just doing what was portrayed to them, and they cut into the movie. So, anyway, there's a great line from Qui-Gon where he says, well, he's like, Misa, speak. And he's like, the ability to speak does not make you intelligent. He says, now get out of here. And Jar Jar's like, no, I'm going to stick around. Obi-Wan comes over and he's like, what's this? He's like, what's going on here? And he just says, oh, it's a local. But Jar Jar says, the safest place right now to go to is Gungan City, which is a hidden city underwater. And so he dives into like the lake there. And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have like underwater breathing apparatuses. And I was like, where did you get these? Why do you have these with you? Have you been to like lots of planets infested with water or covered in water and you just need to go underwater? I don't know. It looks cool, but they put on like almost like a scuba diving like breathing apparatus so they can breathe underwater, and then they follow him down into the hidden city. And Gungan City is just like a bunch of structures and bubbles basically, where it's like they have like a bunch of buildings and then they go in through the bubble and it like lets them in, and then as soon as they're in the bubble they can take off the breathing. They can breathe air. It's like an air pocket basically, but a whole bunch of them, and they can support structures. It doesn't make any sense. Gungan City is stupid, but a cool idea of having a hidden city, I guess, and something that's hidden from Naboo. So that's where they seek refuge, at least for a little bit here. They talk to the Gungan King. They say, the droid army is out here trying to take over Naboo, and he says once they take over the surface, they're going to come after you guys. And the guy's like, oh, I'm not worried. He's like, Gungan King is like, don't worry about it. He's like, whatever. Also, Jar Jar should be banned, so I don't know why he's here. But they end up leaving Gungan City here. They get like a cool stingray ship, sort of. We get a nice scene where they're getting chased by a fish, and it kind of bites onto their ship, and then a huge fish comes and eats that fish, so they get away. And then Qui-Gon says, there's always a bigger fish. I was like, nice. There is another hologram between Lord Sidious and the Federation, where, like I mentioned earlier, they don't tell him about the escaped Jedi, and they're like, we don't want to tell him about that right now. Kind of reminds me of Vader when he would talk to like the generals whenever they would screw up in the original trilogy, and he's like, do not disappoint me again. And they're like, if they don't need to tell something to Sidious or to Vader, like they're not going to tell him anything. So same sort of deal here, but only Sidious is not as obviously powerful as Vader was in the original trilogy. And then I put my notes here. The droids are coming for that ass because we get just like horrible CGI, like the worst. It's like it looks like it was made in like Windows 98, where it's like the droid ships are coming and it's just like green, like low texture. It looks like a Windows background, like a Windows 98 background or like a screensaver. Really like terrible scene. And I know technology was different back in that time. I think actually this movie came out in '99. I think I'm sorry, I didn't check before recording this, but yeah, this part does not age well, and this part looks awful still. And this is like the valley before the city, and they use it a couple times in this movie, and I'm just like, ugh. Like they should have done something else before putting out a new movie. But again, times were different. But the droids show up, they capture Amidala. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon show up there, and they rescue Amidala's group there. All of the droids suck. Like, they have all these droids, but they just get worked by... Jedi, basically. And I guess that's not saying too much, but the Jedi just take all of them out. They're just like... They remind me kind of the Stormtroopers, where the Stormtroopers could never hit anything. Except the Stormtroopers were at least like armored and cool. The droids just, they look dumb and they're skinny, and it's like, I don't know, I don't like the look here. And I know I'm being kind of hard on this movie, but I promise I don't. Although it's got its flaws, but I didn't hate this movie as much as I thought I was going to. But eventually they get in a Naboo cruiser, and then they lose two R2 units who just get like blown into orbit because their shields are down on the cruiser and they're trying to escape. And there's R2-D2 and then two other droids that go up and they're outside. They're fixing the ship, and then there's like asteroids or like I don't know if it's just like laser shots from other ships or whatever, but two of the droids just like go flying and we never see them again. Like they get thrown to next week. And then R2-D2 is the last one, and he's going over there and he's like looking, and he like reconnects the shields, and they're like, that little droid did it. And R2 is always awesome, and he's always fixing shit, and he's the best R2 unit, so he's safe, and it's cool to see him in the prequel trilogy here. And so he goes back on the ship, and they get away. But they actually have to end up going to Tatooine, because their ship is fixed to an extent, but the parts are damaged, and they can't go much farther. So they have to take refuge on Tatooine. Between that, we also get the Federation. They have another hologram meeting with Lord Sidious, and he's like, also, this is my apprentice, Darth Maul. This is the first time we see Darth Maul, and Darth Maul is the shit, because Darth Maul looks super cool here. I mean, really cool shirt as well that I got on Amazon, where it's Darth Maul and some foreshadowing here, but we get the amazing scene at the end with Darth Maul fighting Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. So really cool shirt. Darth Maul is amazing. Awesome character design. One of the coolest characters ever in Star Wars. Which is kind of bittersweet. Padme, clean up this droid. He saved our lives. And so, similar to when Luke's cleaning R2 in the original trilogy, Padme goes in there and she's like cleaning R2. I mentioned before they go to Tatooine. This is where we get Watto and little Annie Skywalker. And little Anakin asks Natalie Portman, who plays Padme, if she's an angel. And let me tell you, the answer is obviously yes, because Natalie Portman is an angel. She is incredible, and she's gorgeous, and she's funny. And this role she doesn't do as much. I think she's much younger in this movie too, but Natalie Portman has aged like a fine wine, and I am very glad she's in this prequel trilogy, because she takes it, she makes it. I mean, we had Carrie Fisher in the original trilogy, who plays kind of a sex symbol, but she's like this strong female lead character, really, and that continues here with Padme, or Natalie Portman as Padme. So Star Wars does a really good job between the original trilogy, this trilogy, and also the sequel trilogy with Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, of putting really strong, giving women power in Star Wars and putting really strong female lead protagonists in there. So hats off to that, because not a lot of franchises do that. So we also see Sebulba here, who's like I don't even know what he is. I think Anakin calls him like a dung or something, but I don't know. Anyway, he almost kills Jar Jar here, and I wish he did, because that would have been much better than having Jar Jar throw any of this movie. But he doesn't. But he's like, hey, watch where you're stepping. But we see Sebulba as like a bad guy, a villain. He's like this weird creature where he like, I don't know if he's got like 4 arms or whatever, but he's a strange little like thing. But we'll find out he's like a big pod racer, and he wins every time, and we find out kind of why he does. So still to come. But Obi-Wan is trying to fix the ship here, so he's kind of stuck in the ship. Qui-Gon, R2, Anakin, and Padme they all go into Tatooine, and that is when they run into Watto, and Watto's like, I have the parts you need, but you got to pay me for it. And he's like, oh, I have these Republic credits, and Watto's like, that's not going to work. Like, he's like, I don't take Republican credits. And then they're trying to figure out a different way to pay for those parts. So they're like, all right, they end up leaving. The sandstorm's picking up, and they're trying to get back to the ship to figure out another plan. And Anakin's like, you're never going to get back to the ship. The sandstorms are quick. He's like, come to my place. I'll show you. And so we go to see Anakin's house here, where he's living with his mother, Shmi, I think is her name. If that's wrong, I'm sorry. Again, I didn't do probably as much research as I should have before recording this, but this is what you get. So he's like, hey, this is my mom, these are my friends. Kind of a cute moment where like, the kid brings over the friends from school or whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm building a droid. He's like, come see, I'll show you 3PO. And he like grabs Natalie Portman's hand and drags her in. And this is a really cool scene, because we get 3PO without any armor. And he actually starts them up, and he first has one eye. He's like, oh, sorry, 3PO, and he puts his other eye in there. And this is where 3PO meets R2. And he's like, nice to meet you, R2-D2. And it's a really like cool scene, and it's really cool to see them first meet, and seeing 3PO like fully functional, but you see like the blade spinning in his head, and like he's got all his parts on him, and he's got none of that gold armor. Really cool. And it's really cool that Anakin built him as well. So also, I don't know if 3PO and Vader ever meet in the trilogy. I'll have to look that up. I don't think they do, but that would be interesting to see if he like remembered him, or like if his memory gets wiped or whatever happens there. Because obviously 3PO knows Anakin at the time, and yeah, he grows up to be Darth Vader. Spoilers, but hopefully you're not watching this for the first time. So we get a quick scene on the balcony with Darth Maul and Lord Sidious, which is cool because they're both like it's like at night, and they're both in like the dark like Jedi robes there. And he says, "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge." Just a quick bit there. Annie then asks Qui-Gon, they're like sitting down to eat, and Annie asks Qui-Gon if he's a Jedi. He's like, "I saw your laser sword." And he's like, "Yep, I am a Jedi. Like, I'm glad you picked up on that." And he says, he's like, "Oh, well, no one can kill a Jedi." And Liam Neeson's character, Qui-Gon, he just kind of laughs at him. He's like, "I wish that were true." He's like, "If only, right?" But it's cool because it shows that Anakin looks up to the Jedi, and he thinks like they're this all-powerful like entity, really, where he's like, no, Jedi are so powerful and so legendary that it's like he thinks no one can ever kill them, which we find out is false, of course. But that will come. But then there's a kind of a sad scene where he says, "Did you not come to free us as slaves?" And Qui-Gon's like, "Absolutely not, dude." He's like, "I don't even know you were slaves." He's like, we got no plans to, like, we have no business here. He's like, "We're just trying to get our parts so we can go. We're not going to free you as a slave." But Anakin basically does say, you need the money to buy those parts from Watto. He's like, "There's a pod race coming up. I've been building a pod." He's like, "Let me race in there." He's like, "If I win, the race money would be more than enough to cover your parts." And so eventually there's like a back and forth, and they're like, "All right, fine, you can do it." Then there's a scene where Padme is questioning Qui-Gon. She's like, are you sure this is what we should do? She goes, trusting our fate to a boy we hardly know. And she goes, the Queen doesn't wouldn't approve of this. And he's like, the Queen doesn't need to know about this. He's like, hush, child. And then she goes, well, I don't approve. And it's like, okay, well, we don't really care what Padme thinks, so moving on from that. But then we get Qui-Gon talking to Annie's mother, and he says, he's unusually strong in the Force. That's why he reacts so quickly. He can see things before they happen, and that's really cool. And then there's a line where he says, if he grew up in the Republic, we would have identified him much earlier. But because he's banished off as a slave, no one identifies him as a Jedi because they don't know what to look for, but he's super, super powerful. Eventually, Jar Jar does put his dumb fucking tongue in the Energizer beam here, where he's like, hey, Jar Jar, make sure you don't go near that because it's going to make you numb for hours, and he goes to reach a wrench or something, and his tongue goes in it, and he's like, oh, I'm like, dude, your character is the worst. And again, this was trying to be funny, and I'm like, I'm sure there's some kids that laughed at it, but I'm like, this isn't good, this isn't clever humor, you just put a dumb joke in there to make it funny. But anyway, eventually eventually Qui-Gon gets I don't know if he pricks his finger or what, but he's talking to little Anakin, and he sends a blood sample over to Obi-Wan, who's back in the ship. We kind of forgot he was in there, but he's like, hey, I need you to run this blood sample for me, I need a midichlorian count. And then this is when they say, oh, it's over 20,000 midichlorians. And they go, even Master Yoda doesn't have a count that high. And this is when I just put on my notes, fuck you. Because midichlorians are the dumbest shit. Midichlorians are the worst. If you ask almost any Star Wars fan, the Force, what makes the Force so cool is that it's more of religion, where it's it's a belief. Anyone can have the Force, and you just gotta believe in it. That's why you can dedicate to training. In this movie, they're like, oh, well, the Force is based on your midichlorian count. So if you have a bunch of midichlorians, then you're going to be stronger in the Force. If you don't, then you either can't learn the Force, or it's you just can't put a number on it. It should be it's a belief. It's a systemic belief. It's not something that you can quantify. So I don't know. It's really dumb because they have everyone knows this, the midichlorians are introduced here, and it just seems like a bad idea. But moving on, Qui-Gon then bets that Anakin will win the race here, and he says, to Watto, I want the boy to be freed. And then there's a weird scene where Watto throws a chance dice, where he's like, the boy or the mother. He's like, well, give me the boy. He's like, well, got a chance dice right here. He's like, let's see what this does. A little Harvey Dent action, and he throws the dice, and it lands on the boy, and he's like, ah. And I'm like, dude, I don't know if there's a chance dice, no matter what happens you have to honor it, similar to maybe John Wick for a blood pact. I don't know, but basically Watto's like, fine, if Annie wins, you'll get you free him. Then we find out that Padme asks Annie, so you really think you're gonna win? And he's like, well, I've never finished a race. She's like, are you kidding me? She's like, so not only have you never won a pod race, but you've never even finished one? He's like, yeah, I've never finished a race. And she's like, cool. But Qui-Gon's super confident. He's like, he's going to win. He's like, don't worry about it. So we get a shot here of Sebulba sabotaging Anakin's pod. So Anakin's stuck at the start, where the pod racing scene starts, and everyone goes off, and Anakin is like, I don't know what's going on there. Eventually he gets it to go up. And then we just get probably the coolest sequence, maybe one of the coolest sequences in the whole franchise, in all of the Star Wars movies, is the whole pod racing scene. This is incredible. It's by far the best scene in this movie. And what really stood out to me when I was watching this is the sound. Skywalker sound is the best in the business by far, and it's incredible. All of their sounds, I mean, just between them coming up with the blaster sounds, the lightsaber, the pod racing is a whole new set of sounds that they came up with, and it sounds so cool between a big 18-wheeler truck or in a broken down car. The thrusters sound cool. when the pod racers go by, you feel like, I mean, I'm listening on like a surround sound system, and I'm watching in 4K, so like I felt the movie moment where like you hear like the whoosh going by. Really, really amazing sequence. The crashes are insane here, where like they're going at such a high speed. It's like NASCAR basically without the protection, where they crash or they lose a thruster, and then they just go like flying into the dirt, and they're dead pretty much immediately. There's a bunch of really cool sequences here where Anakin's trying to catch up. There's actually a part where he needs to reconnect one of his thrusters. He like puts all the power into one while he turns the other one off, and then like almost like floods it and puts it back on to equal it out and get his power back. So all really awesome stuff. We get a really quick shot of the Jawas, which is cool. The Tusken Raiders are out there, and they're like sniping the pods. So everything from the original trilogy, the Tatooine, really, really cool nods to the original trilogy there, which I did not remember in any of it. So eventually Annie catches up to Sebulba at the end. He like bumps him or like kind of hits him off. Sebulba's like huge piece crashes, and then Annie ends up winning. They say Skywalker like 100 times, or they say young Skywalker. Great job by Skywalker. Skywalker is in first. Also, the reason that Sebulba always wins these races, we find out, is because he's a dirty racer, and he's got like all these bottles and shit that he throws, and he's either sabotaging pods like he did with Annie, or he's just throwing stuff, so that he's like really not even a good racer. He's making all the other racers' machines or pods break, or finding ways to play dirty. So that's why he ends up winning, but Annie overcomes it and he wins. And Wano goes in, Liam Neeson shows up, and he says, "I will find you." No, he doesn't do that, but he does show up, and he says, you know, okay, like free the boy, like he said. Wano's trying to argue like it wasn't a fair bet. Somehow you knew he'd win. I don't know how, but you knew he was going to win because of his Jedi mind trick there, or his ability to see with the Force into the future, and he saw how strong Annie was. And then Qui-Gon is like, "Oh, do you want to talk to the Hutts?" He's like, "You want to talk to Jabba? I think we can figure that out." There is a shot of Jabba at the pod racing, so that's kind of cool to see him, like a younger Jabba. And there's like a scene where he comes out and he's like eating a bug or whatever, but he's much smaller than like the huge Jabba is in the original trilogy, so that was a cool shot. So they go back to Annie's house, where Qui-Gon's like, "Guess what?" He's like, "Our meeting was not an accident." And he's like, "I have freed you." And he goes and he's like, "Hey Mom, guess what? I freed Annie." And then like right in front of the mom, who's also still a slave, and she's like, "Oh, that's so great." She's like, "Did you free me?" He's like, "No, I couldn't free you." She's like, "Oh, cool." So like I'm not really that excited, but no, she does say like, "Wow, now you can like go with them." Qui-Gon's like, "Look, you're gonna come with me, train to be a Jedi." And Annie's like, "Really? Can I do that?" And she's like, "Look, Anakin, this is your choice." And he's like, "Oh, great, I'm gonna go." But he's like, "I will come back for you." There's like an emotional scene actually before they leave where he starts crying, and he's like, "I don't want to leave you." He's like, will I ever see you again?" And she says, "What does your heart tell you?" And he says, "I will come back and free you, I promise." So little Annie and Qui-Gon Jinn go to take off there, but not before Darth Maul gets on a flying chair, like a scooter. It's like a weird design, but it's cool because he's like on the mountain pass looking over, and he looks through the binoculars, and then he gets on his speeder and it flies in there. And as they're taking off, he flips off of his speeder and he takes his lightsaber out, and Qui-Gon takes his lightsaber, and they have like a quick little duel here. So Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul Part 1, which was really cool. And that he's like, "Annie, run to the ship," and they start taking the ship off. He holds off Darth Maul long enough before jumping onto like the opening of the ship, and then they take off there. And they're like, "Who was that?" And they're like, "I don't know, but like we need to find out who's trying to take me out. He was trained in the ways of the Force." What's really cool about that scene too is that Darth Maul is using a single-sided lightsaber there, and so he kind of is sizing him up, and he realizes that he can't take down Qui-Gon with just that lightsaber. So the crew then gets to Coruscant, where Amidala meets with Senator Palpatine, and Senator Palpatine suggests, we need to elect a stronger Supreme Chancellor. She's like, "No, that's going to take too long." She's like, "Our people are dying. We need to act quickly." And that's when Palpatine is like, we just need to accept it, the federal occupation. Like, we just need to understand that part. She's like, I'm not going to do that. Qui-Gon Jinn then meets with the Jedi Council, and they say, you know, we're going to find out who your attacker is. Qui-Gon also says, you know, this boy I met, I believe he can be trained as a Jedi, and he's the one who will bring balance to the Force. And they're like, the prophecy? And he's like, yes, I believe so. So they're like, all right, Qui-Gon, but we don't want to let you train Annie right now, like, he's too dangerous. And so there's like a nice scene where Obi-Wan kind of talks back to Qui-Gon, and he's like, I don't understand why you don't see it. They all know how dangerous Anakin is, why don't you? And he says, like, Anakin's fate is undecided. He's like, we can train him and, like, he can become a great Jedi. We get a quick scene of the Senate session where Amidala actually says, you know, we need to elect a new chancellor, a strong chancellor, because whoever's in there right now is not getting it done. And Palpatine is like, he's one manipulative son of a bitch, because it's fun to see him pull all the strings here, where he's just a senator right now, but he's very clearly, like, pulling the right strings. Palpatine knows who to push and who to pull and how to get into power, because he knows the political powers and the physical power are two important things and two very different things. So it's fun to see him do a masterful job in this prequel series. Annie then meets with the Jedi Council himself. They say, how do you feel? And he says, I feel cold. And then that's when Yoda says, you know, fear is the path to the dark side, which is similar to what he told Luke in the original trilogy. He says, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And he says, I sense much fear in you. And Amidala says, you know, I'm going back to Naboo. They say young Skywalker's fate will be decided later. So this is actually where Qui-Gon tells Annie, what are metachlorians? And he says, metachlorians are microscopic life forms that reside in all living cells. He goes, without it, we would have no knowledge of the Force. I don't even want to get into the metachlorians, dude. Other than that rant I had earlier, because they're just dumb. Metachlorians are just stupid. And Annie says, I don't understand. And I'm like, well, neither do I. So you're not the only one, Annie. But they go back to Naboo. Amidala says, they tell Amidala, as soon as you land, you'll be arrested and the Federation will force you to sign a treaty. They're like, I don't know what your plan is here. And they land on Naboo. Gungan City is empty. Amidala says, don't worry, I have a plan, like, just trust me. But then they cut the scene, so we don't know what that plan is just yet. They land on Naboo. Gungan City is empty. Jar Jar is like, oh, he comes up from the water and he's like, oh, they went to the sacred place. And they're just like, what? Why didn't you tell us about this before? The sacred place is just the forest, apparently. So they go to see the Gungans, who are just like hiding in like a separate section of the forest. And then this is where we get the big plot twist, where Padme actually reveals that I am Queen Amidala. I am the captain now. And she says, this is my stunt double, my body double. And like, I had to do this to protect my identity. I'm like, this is a really dumb plot twist. I think it's Keira Knightley who plays the fake Queen Amidala. They look super similar, but like, she's wearing that white, really weird, like, white makeup the whole time to cover. But I don't know, it's a really weird, like, plot twist. It's like, all right, so Padme, who we thought was the handmaid, and she was actually the queen the whole time. So I guess that's kind of cool, but mostly just stupid, I think. Anyway, the Gungan King is like, let's be friends, and then he does that weird, like, motorboating thing. So let me get back to the horrific CGI grass here. Thus begins the Gungan droid battle. I gotta be honest with you, I don't care about this at all. They have, like, these weird, like, blue grenades here that, like, electrify people, but I don't know, it's weird. So we're an hour and 48 minutes into this movie now, and we finally get a space battle, with them taking the Naboo cruisers out to space and having a Star Wars fight, where they get like the multiple cockpits, where they're like, red leader here, blue leader here, like whatever they say. And I'm like, why did it take so long to get a space battle in a Star Wars movie? Like, the original trilogy is full of them, and it took us almost 2 hours. This movie's almost over at this point to get a space battle. And I'm like, ugh. Then we get back on the ground here at the Gungan battle. There's a real line that says, ouch time. One of the Gungans says, ouch time. Great writing, dude. But more interesting. And meanwhile, Padme, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan sneak into the palace, and oh boy, Darth Maul is back, and boy, we get the shot. Anyone else we get? We get Duel of the Fates, baby. Probably the best Star Wars score in all of Star Wars. You already know the score if you've seen this movie. So good. The Duel of Fates is amazing every time, and it adds so much epic. It adds just a level of epicness and awesomeness to this whole ending sequence here. And this whole ending sequence is what kind of saves the movie for me. Honestly, even though I didn't hate, I know it sounds like I'm ragging on Phantom Menace a lot. I really didn't hate most of it, but there are parts that certainly drag. But the ending scene is not one of them. So Darth Maul, like a badass, uses the Force to throw like a canister into the wall to open the door behind him, just like all casual like. That was really cool. He's clearly like leveled up. Essentially, he's saved all his real moves for now. That shot of the double blade lightsaber is such a game changer, because it's like he had that fight with Qui-Gon before, where they both have the single lightsaber, and he was like evenly matched, or he couldn't take him down. So he realized like, oh, I need to be better. I need to reinvent myself to take these Jedi Knights down, because like I can't even take down Qui-Gon on my own. So that's when he gets the double blade lightsaber, and he's like, you know, if I'm gonna take two of these dudes on at once by myself, like I'm gonna have the advantage there. There's also there's Anakin in space. That stuff all sucks, where he's like, this on autopilot, and then he's like, whoa, this is tense, and I'm like, just all terrible acting. There's a really dumb grappling scene with Padme's crew where they're like, we're sneaking into the palace, and they all shoot up and they grapple, and then they just like all slowly ascend, and I'm like, I think you wanted this to look cool, and it looks really, really awkward. But we go back to the really awesome scene with Maul and Obi-Wan, and they're like flipping around. They're trying to hit him, but he's got the dual lightsaber, and he's like knocking Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's lightsabers there. Obi-Wan actually gets knocked down to the lower level, so he gets separated from the group. Qui-Gon is fighting Maul. He kind of backs him into the corner, and then we get the red door scene, which is also just as good, where there's like these probably 5 or 6 or more like electromagnetic doors that are like on a timer, so they just start like shutting down. And so Darth Maul is all the way in the back, and then there's 1 or 2 fields, and then Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon just kind of sits there, and he actually goes to his knees and he like meditates, and then Obi-Wan is all the way at the end. So, and this is cool because these all like go in order and open and close. So they're just waiting, and it's really, really cool because Maul's like pacing back and forth, Qui-Gon's sitting there, and Obi-Wan's just kind of looking. And it's a really, really cool cut in the action. Padme's team gets overrun by the droids, and she's like, all right, put your weapons down. She's like, you guys win this round. We go back to Annie in space. At least R2 is with Annie, but he's working on like trying to fight the control ship to take down the droids, because the droids are starting to like wreck the Gungans there. We go back to Maul. So the doors open again. Obi-Wan starts running. Qui-Gon gets to Maul, and they're fighting, but then the doors close again. And Obi-Wan, as he gets to the last red door, he's closed off. So it's just Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. We're fighting now, and all you can do is watch. And eventually, Darth Maul actually gets the better of him and puts his lightsaber through Qui-Gon. There's like that classic no scene where Obi-Wan's like, no! And he like yells in the camera, like every other movie. But that's a pretty crazy moment, because they kill Qui-Gon here. I mean, he's like on his dying breath, but he is dead shortly after. So Liam Neeson does an awesome job in this movie, and it's pretty shocking to see them kill off a big character like that. But it's cool because then you see Obi-Wan, like, now he's pissed off, and now he's just waiting for that door to come in. And so eventually the doors open up again, and he runs after him, and he starts going at him with the lightsaber. And this reminded me a lot of when Luke, in Jedi, when Luke gets mad, the Emperor's trying to egg him on, and Luke gets mad, and then he starts like working Vader, because he like just starts hitting him because the hate is flowing through him. hate always makes you stronger, and the adrenaline's running, and like suddenly Obi-Wan is not afraid of Darth Maul at all because he wants to avenge Qui-Gon. But Darth Maul still does get the better of him. He ends up like kicking Obi-Wan over, like, there's a huge circle, like a hole in the middle, because of course there is, and there's like one handle, so Obi-Wan like holds on to that, but his lightsaber goes tumbling down. His lightsaber's gone, similar to when Luke lost his hand in Empire, and then his lightsaber's gone, and he doesn't have anything to do. So Qui-Gon is over there on his dying breath on the floor, but his lightsaber's still there. There's a really cool shot where Maul is like taunting him, where he's like taking his lightsaber and he's hitting the floor with it. Like he's like, "Come on, dude!" And he's like, "Let me finish you off." And Obi-Wan actually has the wherewithal to use a little bit of the Force to move the lightsaber slightly closer. He, similar to Luke in Return of the Jedi, where he goes off the board and he vaults himself up and gets the lightsaber from R2-D2. Obi-Wan fires up from the hole here, summons his Qui-Gon's lightsaber to him, and then he cuts Maul in half and pushes him over, and we see Maul tumbling. This is cool, but it's weird to me that like a flip over Maul is like what shocked him, and he couldn't believe it. Like he pulled that move off. So, but that's what takes Maul down. He falls in half. Spoilers: he does eventually come back in like the Clone Wars, but as far as the movies go, as far as we know, Darth Maul is donezo. What I really like about this prequel trilogy, though, the choreography is so much better than anything in the original trilogy for the lightsaber scenes, because these lightsaber scenes were like fast and furious, and they're flipping and they're doing all these different moves. The original trilogy, I think, is a much better overall quality in the story, especially the story as well. But the lightsaber scenes are lacking at the time. This one, I think they really focused on the lightsaber scenes, and that I think only gets better as the movies go on, and then the sequel trilogy, I think, does a really good job with that as well. And it wouldn't be a Star Wars movie if something didn't blow up from the inside. So of course, Anakin is in there and he's shooting everything, and it starts blowing up, making a chain reaction there. He blows up the control ship. That stops all the droids. Apparently all of the droids were controlled by that one control ship, so the Gungans win by default because Anakin blows up their control ship. And he says, "Now this is pod racing," and I'm like, why did you say that? Why did you have to say that, Anakin? And that's pretty much the end of it. I mean, they end up burning Qui-Gon, so that's a scene at the very end there. Senator Palpatine actually becomes voted Chancellor Palpatine, so he gets his wish there. And he says, like, "Oh, young Skywalker, we will be watching your career very closely." And it's like, "Oh, you certainly will." And when they're burning Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan says, he meets briefly with Yoda, and he says, "I want to train Anakin." He says, "I got permission, I'm going to be training you." But Mace Windu is there next to Yoda, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and he says, "There's no doubt that the attacker was a Sith." And Yoda says, "Yes, there were always two." He goes, "A master and an apprentice. No more, no less." Which is true for the original trilogy as well, with the Emperor and Vader. But he goes, "But which one was destroyed?" And we're like, "I don't know, but probably the apprentice." And then there's just a lame celebration at the end, but that is The Phantom Menace. So the Force was strong with this one. This one for me was an easy choice. This one's got to go to Liam Neeson, who plays Qui-Gon Jinn. This is sadly his only Star Wars movie, as he dies, as we just talked about at the end here. Liam Neeson is an amazing actor in pretty much all of his movies. He's known as, I don't want to say an action star, but he's like always in that thriller movie, and he's always kind of playing the same character. And now I think a lot of people will see him as like that Taken role, but he does a really good job in the Star Wars universe here. He fits in seamlessly, and it's too bad that they killed him off in this movie, because I would have liked to see his character develop, or at least him take Obi-Wan under his wing a little bit more for at least one more movie, maybe the trilogy. But it lets kind of Ewan McGregor take over this series now for the remaining two movies and train Anakin. And then of course in the next movie we get an older Anakin played by Hayden Christensen, which I know gets a lot of hate, but I don't think he does really that bad of a job. Other than he gets some terrible dialogue, but I don't think he as an actor is bad, and he's like my canon Anakin now, so I have kind of a soft spot for him. But yeah, I just think Liam Neeson was the best. He really like acts circles around everybody else, and Ewan McGregor is really good in this too. I think they're 1 and 2 in this movie. There's not a whole lot of other great acting. Natalie Portman is a great actress, but at this point in her career, she didn't have the chops to stand out in this movie, really. Even though I think she does a good job when she reveals that she's the queen. At the end there, she starts like giving out orders, and she does a decent job, but she's really more of like a side character in this one. So I think Liam Neeson takes the cake here as Qui-Gon Jinn. Okay, so for a score, I'm going to give this one a 7.1. I actually enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. It doesn't come near the original trilogy, in my opinion. All 3 of those movies I think are masterpieces. This one, although I enjoyed it more, it still felt like a chore. There were parts where I was just like, oh man, it's hard. If I wasn't reviewing this, I wouldn't really care. But all of the Darth Maul stuff is awesome, and then like the choreography and the lightsaber fights I think was really cool. And it was nice to get those updated visuals moving from the original trilogy. But yeah, there's some CG that doesn't hold up, and there's just parts of the movie where I'm like, I don't need to watch this again for a while. So 7.1 I think is a fair score, maybe even a generous score, but that's where I stand with that. Okay, and as you just saw the rankings here, like I said, I don't think this comes up to, or this holds a candle to the original trilogy, so by default this one's going to go at number 4. We'll see if it ends up at the bottom, or if there are other movies that are worse. I would have to say this is probably the best one of the prequel trilogy, but personally, I know I'm the outlier, but I really like Attack of the Clones. That's like the one I remember the most. So I know that's like a lot of people's worst Star Wars movie, so we'll see. I gotta rewatch it, and I'm not gonna make any decisions yet, but for now it slots in number 4 behind the original trilogy. So at number 1 we have Return of the Jedi, number 2 we have A New Hope, number 3 Empire Strikes Back, and then now number 4 we have The Phantom Menace. Alright guys, well thank you for joining me again for the review you've been looking for. This has been me reviewing episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Hope you enjoyed this. I'm having such a great time doing all these, so please, if you like the comment, please spread the word. Tell your friends to watch Project Potter. We got a Mr. Robot show here. We got Star Wars. We got Wick Watch, which is done already, the John Wick review. We got Harry Potter coming. We got Jurassic Park coming. We got Batman coming. Other things to come next year. So please spread the word. We got the Marvel review series. So we got Iron Man up there now. That's going to be kind of our big one. And then we do have more coming up with eventually Hulk and then eventually Iron Man 2 and the rest of the MCU movies. So please watch out for that. I'll be putting up videos, or I'll be posting whenever new content goes up there. But until next time, may the Force be with you.